Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and today I am back to do a review of the Violectric DHA V226 all-in-one headphone, DAC, preamp, and amplifier. All right, so this was loaned to me direct from Lake People, who is the parent company of Violectric, as facilitated by Arthur from Power Holdings, Inc., who is the U.S. distributor of the Lake People brand and Lake People line. So thanks to Lake People over in Germany for sending me this unit. Thanks to Arthur at Power Holdings for facilitating the loan and being the contact point. And to the rest of you, to my viewers, like neither Arthur at Power Holdings nor Lake People has made any attempt to influence my opinion on this. This is a loaned unit that I will be sending back, so all of the thoughts that you are about to get are mine and mine alone. Now, full disclosure, I have had some email correspondence with both Arthur at Power Holdings Inc. and with Fried Ream at Lake People, who is the chief designer of these products, including the V226. Okay, but again, they were not trying to sell me or influence my review in any way. They were just trying to help me understand this product. Okay, so I will share a little bit more about what I learned from some of those conversations and how it relates to this review and this product as we get into it. So, before we get into any further details, please remember to like and subscribe and to do those things that you normally do to support YouTube channels. All right, and so we will jump back in and get into the review. What is this thing? So as I just said, this is an all-in-one unit. It has a DAC in it. It is a headphone amplifier, and it has a switchable pre-out/line out on it. Okay, so it can fill several functions in a system in one box. So it is an all-in-one unit. It costs $1,600 US. Here in the United States, if you wish to buy this, you need to go to Power Holdings Inc.'s website, which I will put a link to down below. However, a quick Googling also shows that you can buy this from Audio 46 as well. So I will also include that link in the description below as well. All right. The DAC portion of this thing has a USB-C input only, and it supports PCM signals up to 32-bit 384 kilohertz, and it supports up to DSD 256. There is no MQA on it if that is important to you. The DAC portion is built around a Cirrus CS43131 chip. All right. The amplifier section is rated at 3,500 milliwatts of output power at 100 ohms and up to 23 volts RMS output at 600 ohms. And it is designed to both deliver high voltage for high impedance loads, but also give you a fair amount of current output for lower impedance planars and things of that nature. And I did throw a range of headphones at this, which I will get to in a moment. So I did test its ability to handle low Z, high efficiency planars, low efficiency planars, low Z dynamic driver headphones, high Z dynamic driver headphones. We'll get to all of that in a little bit too. All right. Fried asked me to stress that this is actually a full balanced amplifier, that there are 4 amplifier sections in it, and that it is a true balanced amp design, which is cool, but also raises some questions, which we'll get to in a little bit as well. All right, and let's see, what else? And then again, there is a switchable preamp output / just loop out on it as well. The volume knob here is attached to an RK27 potentiometer. We see on the front panel here, we've got the power switch. Right here on the front, we have a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced headphone output. We have a 4-pin XLR balanced headphone output. And then we have the pretty standard 6.35 millimeter or 1/4 inch single-ended headphone output on the front. We have switches to select between 2 RCA stereo inputs and then the USB DAC module. And then we have a switch here to select using the head amp output, the line output, or neither if you wish. All right, round back. We have the power cord input. This is the 115 volt version. If you were buying this in the EU or many other places in the world, you would be using the 230 volt option here. All right, here is that RCA unbalanced line out / pre out, which has a button to select between the two, whether you want it pre or post, meaning just a loop out, or to use this as a full preamp and have the potentiometer here control the output level. Okay, so we get the switch there for that. Then we have two unbalanced RCA stereo inputs for analog signals, and then we have two dip switch banks here, which control the gain controls. And you have options of having a negative up to a negative 18 decibel gain or a positive 18 decibel gain. And there are, it looks like we have plus and minus 6 dB and plus and minus 18 dB gain stages there. I basically let it stay at the default setting, which is no gain either direction for most of my testing, and that really handled quite well the full range of headphones that I threw at it. I did not really feel the need to adjust that. However, if you are going to use all low efficiency planars and or high impedance dynamics, you might want to boost that gain up. If you are a use IEMs at a desktop kind of person, you might want to lower that gain setting. Okay, I think that is about it for features and what this thing is. Let's talk about how Violectric or Lake people, how they anticipate this product being used, because this became very clear in my email correspondence with Mr. Ream, who is again the chief designer of this thing. And he clearly envisions it being used as an all-in-one unit, meaning you are using it as a DAC amp. He is not intending you to use this with an external DAC, right? And these extra inputs are included if you wanted to have, say, analog sources to plug into this, such as a turntable. Maybe you have a reel-to-reel tape deck, or you have some other legacy device, maybe even a CD player that has analog outs that you just really like the sound of that you would like to put through here. You have the option to do that with the RCA inputs. What is conspicuously absent here, despite the fact that we have balanced headphone amp written on the front panel here, despite the fact that the box that it ships in says balanced headphone amplifier on it, despite the fact that we have two different flavors of balanced headphone output on the front, okay, we see no option for analog balanced input. We don't see XLR inputs. We don't even see a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon input to use with a balanced DAC anywhere. That again comes back to that choice apparently was made to not have a balanced analog input because the primary intended use was for this to be an all-in-one, to be used with the internal DAC, okay? Only bypass the internal DAC if you have a digital source and you have another analog source or two, like a turntable that I just mentioned, okay? But it clearly is not really intended to be used with an external digital source that you would use with an external DAC. So as I review this, and seeing those words from Mr. Ream, it became clear that I needed to frame this review in that way, to review this in its intended use case, to see how it stacks up with other options that you could get for $1,600 to match this use case. And I will talk about that in a little bit. The bottom line with that is that for the use case, I think we have a bit of a mixed bag product. Right? I think the headphone amp section in this thing is excellent. If you are familiar with the Violectric V200 series of headphone amplifiers, and I have the HPA V281 on my desk as my high-end reference amplifier right now still, even though that's like a 2014 design with like a 2015 manufacturing date. That amp has served me very well. I have yet to hear it sound truly bad with any headphone, like have a negative synergy, if you will, or sound truly bad with any headphone that isn't itself flawed. There are some better matches, like better synergies with individual pieces that I have found, but it does a great job with the whole gamut of headphones, and you can see it on this channel that I have thrown at it. And I also owned the HPA V200 for a little while. And the amplifier in this thing really carries the tradition forward, I think, of having that sound signature of the Vio V200 line. Meaning, you get a warm, smooth, relaxed, large soundstage presentation with very excellent but still very subtle and smooth, and to me natural in its presentation of detail retrieval, micro detail retrieval, and texturing and that sort of thing. And even within the large-ish soundstage, you get pretty strong imaging and separation and a reasonably holographic spatial presentation within that. So all of those features that I think are characteristic of the Vio V200 amplifier line are found in the amplifier of this unit. The headphone amp in here is very good. I think that, so this is supposedly like the entry-level amp anyway. The amplifier portion of this is like the entry level into this revamped V200 series that's coming up. Okay, I think that it is an improvement over the V200 amp, which again I had for a little while. I mean, and that was an even older design, like 2010-ish, I think, is when that was designed and released. And I think this is a step forward from that. I found the amplifier section to be just behind, and I mean just behind. It's close. My V281 in just about every sonic technical category. So the V281 to me is still the better amp. It's a little bit punchier, it's got a little bit better detail retrieval, has slightly better timbre, slightly more holographic sound, spatial presentation, and so forth. But this is very, very close to that. I remember the V281 being quite a step up from the V200. Like, that was a pretty big performance gain there from memory. So if that is at all accurate, and this being as close to the 281 as it is, I think there is a fairly significant technical performance jump from the V200 to this as a headphone amp. Okay, I think the preamp output of this is also very good. To test the preamp section on my desktop anyway, I had I set the RCA outputs to their variable, their actual preamp function, so that I could control volume. And these outputs went to my Parasound Zone Amp V3 amp that I use on my desktop, which is currently driving a pair of Yamo C93 Mark II speakers. No complaints about the preamp. I think the spatial presentation that I mentioned was nicely holographic, good punch to the sound and all of that. Like, it was a well-functioning, effective preamp, okay, if that is important to you in your system. All right, that brings us to the DAC and DAC performance. And this is where I think things get trickier here. Now, I think it's also safe to say that traditionally, people do not necessarily clamor for Lake People or Violectric DACs. Okay, they are not a company that is known for awesome DAC performance. They do have some standalone DACs. They have offered DAC modules as add-ons to their headphone amps in the past. On this one, the DAC is not a module. You see, there's no like modular plug in and out here or anything like that. It's just built in with the USB-C input. To me, the DAC here is, I mean, it's a bit of a letdown, honestly. The quality of it, to me, does not come anywhere close to the quality of the amplifier section, and I'm a bit surprised at the performance gap between the two. And unfortunately, I feel like the DAC is very much an anchor and puts a ceiling on this unit as an all-in-one unit that is much lower than the performance ceiling of the amplifier itself. Now, some of the reasons, some of the decisions, the design decisions that were made were price sensitive, and that's coming directly from Freed Ream, that there was some price concerns going on to get this unit $1,600. And to my ear, it sounds like a lot of the design and build and like a lot of the budget basically to bring this unit into the world went to the amplifier section. All right, even with that, Mr. Ream told me in his email that he thinks that the internal DAC is more than sufficient for the all-in-one use case. More than sufficient. That the use of the term sufficient there is tricky, particularly in audio, because that's very much in the ear of the beholder. To the ears of this beholder, I don't agree. I think that the DAC in this, I said it a moment ago, like caps the overall performance of this device at much lower than what the headphone amp section is capable of. Okay, so the sound of the DAC on its own, it is similar to the sound of the amp in that it's very warm, smooth, and laid back. It has a bit of punch to it, like the amplifier in this too has a bit of punch. It's got that Violectric, physicality to it. But it's more of the same. So when I use Violectric amps, like my V281 for example, I have paired it with a Berkeley Alpha Series 2, which is a very neutral, incisive DAC. I have sometimes paired it with my Chord Hugo 2, which is also a very neutral, incisive kind of DAC. Okay, and then beyond that, losing my train of thought here for a moment. 1 second. When I had the V200, got it back. When I had the V200, I had it paired with a Socris DAC 1321, which is kind of the same thing. So like the Violectric amplifier soundstage can at times sound a bit artificially big. And so those DACs that I just mentioned, with their incisiveness and sometimes a little bit narrower in staging, they kind of bring that soundstage in a little bit more control and balance that one sort of maybe weakness of the Vio amps out a bit. And then because they're a little bit more detail forward, they bring out a little bit more of the details from the more, laid back, smooth presentation of these amps and all of that. So the internal DAC does not do those things. It doubles down on that warm, smooth sound. However, where the amplifiers are very good at being subtly detailed and textured and still resolving like the micro details and all of that, this DAC doesn't do. It just doesn't do that, unfortunately. How do I know this? Well, I spent a fair amount of time using the two RCA stereo inputs here and pairing various outboard DACs with just the amp in here to figure out about how much money sonically, about where the internal DAC compares to. Okay, it doesn't catch this, the Hugo 2, nor should it be expected to, because this is like a $2,500, $2,600 product, okay? But the Hugo 2 is what let me know that the amp in this thing is really good, because everything that this was presenting to the amplifier, it seemed to amplify and pull out pretty effectively. I compared it to my shit Bifrost 2, at least the single-ended output of it, and this was behind the Bifrost 2. Even though the Bifrost 2 also has that warmer, smoother, larger staging kind of presentation to it as well, it's also much more resolving, has more natural timbre, has a little bit more macrodynamic impact to it, and that sort of thing. And so like there was a noticeable absence of micro details from the internal DAC as compared to the Bifrost 2. I compared the internal DAC on this to the single-ended output of the SMSL SU-9n, which I have in for review as well. And I thought the internal DAC in this and that SMSL SU-9n kind of traded blows. They were probably on roughly equal ground in overall technical performance and like pretty even on detail retrieval and that sort of thing. I think the Vio had a little bit better timbre, but I think the SU-9n had a little bit better spatial presentation, and they had signature differences too. Like the SU-9n is a little bit more treble forward, not bright, not glary, just more treble forward than this one is, which is very kind of rolled off and smooth in the top end. And then I tried the single-ended output of the Schiit Modius, which is a $200 unit, and to my ear, that sounded better just across the board, okay, than the internal DAC on this thing and the single-ended output of the SU-9n, which has me a little bit worried about what the SU-9n is going to do, but I'll get back to that one, okay? So, as far as the performance per dollar that you get from the internal DAC in this thing, I mean, maybe $200 US, like right around in there. It does not resolve micro details or do spatial stuff particularly well. And that's unfortunate because the amp can and absolutely does when you give it a nice, clean, clear signal and, you know, subtly detailed signal in there, such as you get from the Hugo 2 or even the Bifrost 2 and all of that. So, as an all-in-one, $1,600. Oh, that's a little bit tough. You know, but the thing about it is even if they had just given the amp at $1,600, I might have been very tempted to just say, yeah, good amp. Probably is worth about $1,600. To me, a definitive test that I did, and I'll try and put a picture of this as I talk here on the screen and just talk over it. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. It's kind of a really definitive test here. I got my Lake People G111 amplifier out, which I have a review of, and I'll put a link down in the description for it, which same designer, okay, Friedream, designed this one too, as far as I know. Okay, and I connected that to the single-ended output of a Schiit Bifrost 2, run through a Schiit Saga preamp. Now, if I remember these prices correctly, the Bifrost 2 is about $700. The Schiit Saga, which is now like the Saga Plus, I think, which is out right now. I have the older version. The Saga is about $400. The G111 here is about $550. So, $700 and $400, that's about $1,100. $550 for this, you're talking $1,650, right, for the package. I tried all of that against just this as an all-in-one, and I used my Canon N6 Mark II DAP as just a digital transport using a USB-C to USB converter to go into either the Bifrost or into this thing with, sorry about that, with AudioQuest Forest USB cables.
I wasn't able to overlay this photo into the video as I just mentioned, but I decided to make this quick little clip, show you the picture of the system that I used to compare. You see the Bifrost 2 and the Schiit Saga stacked up on the left. You see my KN DAP there that was used as the source, and then the G111 and the V226 were stacked up here on the right. Ignore the Zen Stream, ignore the Matrix Audio X Saber DAC you see on the lower left. They were just there. This is all rigged up into my, or usually is rigged up into my 2-channel speaker system. And I just brought the 2 head amps over here to compare them, as it was a little easier to move those than to move the pieces of shit. All right, so this is what I did here, just to give you a quick visual of what I was just talking about. Yeah, I think that's enough. Let's get back to the video.
And what I found was really interesting. So that, like, the reason I wanted to do that test is because to me the Bifrost 2, the Saga preamp, and the Lake People G111 is an even, like, it's the same type of features. You get a DAC, you get a headphone amp, and you get preamp functionality, but more. right? You get more inputs, analog inputs with the Saga. You get more digital inputs with the Bifrost 2. And you do have the option of going balanced if ever you want to with the G111 and the Bifrost 2. Okay, so in terms of system capability, that expands on it for, $1,650, $1,700. In terms of ergonomics, of course, the all-in-one, you don't have to worry about nearly as much wiring. You only have one power cord instead of 3, okay, and so forth. So, it's a much simpler, easier system to use. And I couldn't do a blind test, A/B comparison on this, because I have to actually physically change the plugs, the USB cords, from the Bifrost into the 226 or something like that, to go back and forth and pull the headphone out of one amp and plug it into the other and all of that. And I tried this with a huge range of headphones, which I should probably get that list out of the way, as I said I was going to. So, I tried low Z dynamic headphones, my Lawton, my Fostex TH900 with the Lawton chambers, purplish things there, Focal Radiance, and Hi-Fi-Man HER9. So those would be the low impedance, generally high efficiency dynamic drivers that I tried. Low impedance, high efficiency planar. I tried the Audeze LCDX closed. I tried the Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS and my Audeze LCD2 pre-phaser revision 1, which is right there as kind of like the medium efficiency planars. I tried Hi-Fi-Man HE6 SE-V2 as the really inefficient planar. I tried my Hi-Fi-Man HE1000 V2 as my really high-end planar. And I tried both the Sennheiser HD6XX and HD600 and the Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm, all as the high impedance dynamics. Tried all of those for testing, and most of them for direct comparisons with the system I was just describing with the Bifrost 2 and the Saga and the G111 versus this. And what I was finding consistently, regardless of headphone type, was the G111, the Bifrost 2, and the Saga were giving me a more accurate spatial presentation. They were giving me better detail retrieval through the mid-range and the treble. And they were giving me more natural and more lifelike timbre, okay, than just this thing was. What this was doing was giving me better bass control. You could tell that I could tell anyway, there was just more tightness and authority and control in the bass and in the sub bass, and a little bit more sub bass presence. That's the amp's influence in here. And I know that because when I pulled the output of the shit stack from the G111 and put it into one of the analog inputs on this thing, that control was still there, but the imaging and the separation and the soundstage and the timbre and the micro detail retrieval and all of that kind of stuff just ratcheted up even well beyond what this was doing, in addition to that bass control. So I am pretty convinced that the DAC in here is holding this unit back as an all-in-one, even though the headphone amp is really good. Okay, it's very good. All right, on its own. So, where does that leave us? Mr. Ream gave me permission to share that in the fall, it is June 7th, 2022, as I filmed this. So later this year in 2022, Violectric is going to be releasing the V202, which is intended to be the direct successor to the V200, and they're going to release the V222, yeah, 3 2s, which is intended to be the direct successor to the V280. Both of those will have balanced analog inputs if you want them, and they either will not have a DAC or they will have the optional DAC like the other V200 series models have had. I anticipate those are going to be really amazing amps. This is a really amazing amplifier. So you might still be interested in the 226 if you have a wide range of headphones and headphone types, because like this thing pushed all of those headphones that I just named, which is a big range of headphone types, and handled them at least well, if not excellently. Okay, sounded pretty good with them all. And as even with my V281, provided that the headphone I'm plugging into it doesn't have a noticeable flaw in it to begin with, it sounds at least good with everything. It may not synergize amazingly with everything, but it sounds at least good. Okay, I've not had it do a negative synergy. I didn't hear that from this one on the range of stuff that I tried with it either. That's not nothing. So if you have that, you have a primarily single-ended system, right? And you are prone to swapping out DACs a lot, and you might have a period of time where you have sold off one DAC and you're waiting for another to come in. You know, you have a backup DAC in here too, and you need that preamp output. If that is you, if that is your niche, this could be a really solid option for you. If you need just the amp and you need a balanced connection, and you might, and it's not because balanced connections are inherently better. They're not. It's just that in the price range that makes sense to pair a DAC with this thing, most of the DACs that have balanced outputs sound better from their balanced outputs than their single-ended, because they were designed balanced, and some kajiggering had to happen to get the single-ended output to go. Okay? Happens all the time. Okay, if you need that, then you might want to hold off until later this year when Vio drops those other two amps, the V202 and the V222 that I just mentioned, and see if those are more to your liking in this price range. Okay, but yeah, other than that, again, the DHA V226, really good headphone amp at the price point. Mediocre DAC, which brings down its all-in-one performance an unfortunate degree, in my opinion. Okay, so I hope I haven't stepped on too many toes with that, but that's what my ears tell me, and that's what the gear that I have had on hand to do direct comparisons with this have told me. Okay, that was a lot of me talking about this amp. I hope that was all useful information. Violectric continues to kill it with their amplifiers. The DACs still need work. I am Wave Theory. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, enjoy the music.